the shell, my best advice is that you love yourself and don't prove nothing to nobody till you show yourself. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in, man. This is Rock, Reach Over Culture Podcast, episode 40. If this is your first time listening, I want to go ahead and give you a round clap of applause. And thank you to everybody that's been tuning in, whether this is your first time tuning in or you've been tuning in every other episode or every episode. Shout out to you. Make sure you subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Deezer Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox. What else? We're on like 20 different channels. I'm going to need a couple of checks, but we're going to get to that. Shout out to all of our YouTube subscribers, man. Let's help me get them subscribers up. If you're watching this right now, and at the end of this video, if you love the content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Leave comments, ups, thumbs down. Anything helps. All feedback is good feedback over here. And make sure when you subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, whatever, make sure you leave a review and a rating. It helps with the visibility of the show. Also, if you want to donate to the show, you can hit us up at Cash App, Reach Over Culture, all one word. Again, it is I, it's Rock. Thank you for tuning in. Not going to take too much of your time. I'm thinking about the last bar in my brother's song, who happens to be at Hip Hop MC on all social media. That's on the song Outro. On his latest EP, This Is Life, Bro. And I'm going to put the link in the bio of this YouTube and also all of the digital platforms that we stream the podcast on. He actually has a song called Link in Bio on his album. Pun intended, no pun intended, whatever. But my brother said, in the shell, my best advice is that you love yourself and don't prove none to nobody till you show yourself. And I remember when he was making that project, and the underlining of that project was to love yourself. And it came at such a perfect time at the beginning of 2019, because 2018 was really a transformational year for me as far as how I dealt with my mental health. I didn't give it any mind or any attention. I didn't believe in depression, anxiety, these different things that people dealt with. I felt like if they look to God and look inside themselves, that they can find the answer. I was ignorant in that way. And it wasn't until 2018, I got closer to my birthday around that time, and somebody that I love dearly forced me, put me in a position where I had to go to counseling, something I did not believe in. And I thank this person for that till this day, because I am absolutely better for it. I need to go back, but it was being introduced into counseling that allowed me to deal with a lot of mental health issues and old trauma that I hadn't come face to face with. I realized in a lot of my old trauma, having to deal with a lot of insecurities I had growing up, I always felt like I was too skinny. I wasn't handsome enough. I wasn't tall enough. I wasn't athletic enough. I was never the best basketball. All these different things I had growing up, a lot of my trauma, as well as a lot of my depression and a lot of the mental health issues that I was dealing with, and it's still overcoming, is tied to how I love myself. I realized that in some of my darkest, deepest moments, I did not love myself. Last episode, we talked about doing what you love, and I tied that to that being a source of self-love. I had no self-love tips. And just more than that, I didn't love myself as a person. And we see that today in culture more relevant than ever. Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, YouTubers going viral. Every which way you look, there's an opportunity for you to look at somebody and not like something about yourself. Now, this isn't a new adage. This is an old concept. I think now more than ever, especially with generations being born in the social media era, they're constantly being pointed to what they should and shouldn't look like, in turn creating more insecurities than ever. And you see it in the suicide rates amongst preteens, teens, and young adults. They're higher than they've ever been, or at least ever been recorded. And we're starting to see a lot more adults commit suicide. The rates are going up because a lot of people are looking at all of these different avenues, I feel, and negating the actual personal love that they have for themselves. And even with this, I want to go to Mark. I want to go to Mark chapter 12. Excuse me. I want to go to Mark chapter 12. And I am a believer. I am a Christian. I do hold Christian values, but this podcast is for any and everybody. So whether you're a Christian, non-Christian, whatever, you're not judged here. Hopefully you take anything out of this next 10 to 15 minutes. And if it applies to you, apply it to you. If not, then show love anyway, leave a review, whatever. But I want to make sure that this platform is not just relegated to believers. It is for everybody, but I am a believer, so I do tend to go to scripture. And this is Mark, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. He's recording a voyage that they're currently on. I can't really tell you where they're going, but amongst this voyage, they're being constantly asked questions, and Jesus is constantly giving parables. So we get to Mark chapter 12, 28. Let's start at 28. I'm reading from the NIV. It says, one of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked, of all the commandments, which is most important? 29. The most important one, answered Jesus, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than this. Now, the part that stuck out to me in that passage was 12:31, which is the second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. And you look at all of the different things that's going on in the world, whether it be racial tension, political stances, it's hate. You look at people's comments, concerns, whether it be on YouTube, social media, this, that, and the third. It's a lot of hate. Everybody hating. Right? And it says to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Take biblical stance out of it, right? How many of us struggle to love our neighbors, but in turn struggle with self-love? Is it possible that we struggle to love others because we don't have enough love for ourselves? I asked myself this question when I really came to this epiphany in the beginning of 2019. I struggled to love my wife at the time. I struggled to love the friends that was around me. I struggled to love my family because I actually didn't have a lot of love for myself. I didn't invest a lot of love in myself spiritually, emotionally, mentally. The only part I invested in love with myself is physically, that being lifted weights. Don't get crazy. But all the other areas and avenues, I didn't love myself, and I didn't invest in actually loving myself to build myself up spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And so I didn't have enough love to give to everybody else because I didn't even have enough to give to myself. And I feel for some that once they fill their cup up and fill themselves up spiritually, emotionally, mentally, they'll be so overwhelmed. Because this is my testimony. Once I begin to build myself up in all these different areas and actually begin to love who I was looking at in the mirror, it made it easier for me to love those around me. So when I check out this scripture, 12:31, it says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. How many of us actually struggle with loving the people that's around us, loving our wives, loving our brothers, loving our cousins, loving our aunties, loving our co-workers, and mind you, there's different levels of love. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody got to be your best bud, but actually showing common courtesy and respect. How many of us actually struggle doing that, showing love in general, because we don't have a lot of love for who we see in the mirror? So I just want to give you 3 quick points, 3 quick tips for myself that I use whenever I'm in a space when I'm struggling to love myself, or whenever I'm having to pull myself out of a ditch, or anybody that comes and asks me, how do I begin to love myself? I give them these 3 keys, okay? First key, and this ain't for everybody, so this ain't for you, this ain't for you, but if you know this is for somebody, share. This is what helped me. Hopefully it may be able to help you. First key, accept yourself. Psalms 139:14 NIV says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. This is the psalmist David. The same David that slayed Goliath, the same David that slept with Bathsheba, the same David that tried to get Bathsheba's husband killed, the same David that pretty much threw an entire kingdom away. That same David. David was in a point of exile where it was just him and God, and he was writing some of the deepest poetry, songs that you can think of in reverence to God. And one of the things that he told God about himself is that I know that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Part of accepting yourself is forgiving yourself, because this is after David has already done all of the BS that he's done. You got to accept where you are right now. Doesn't mean you got to settle. Settle and accepting are 2 different things. Settling for where you are is saying I'm not going to change and I can't change and that I am who I am. Accepting who you are is saying I can't change what I did in the past, but I can change what I can do moving forward in the future. But in order to accept yourself, you have to forgive yourself. I had to forgive myself for a lot of different things. I have to forgive myself every day for not being the perfect Raheem that I hope to be, or that I even try to portray to be sometimes, to myself. Not to anybody else. I try to fool myself into thinking that I got it all together sometimes, and I really don't. So I even have to forgive myself for that. So part of accepting yourself is forgiving yourself. That's the first A. Second A, absolve yourself. Now, what does absolve mean? Absolve means to set or declare free from blame, guilt, or responsibility. Luke 12:7 says, indeed, the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows. To absolve yourself is to let go of the things that you cannot control. Again, tying back to accepting yourself. Absolve yourself of things you can't control. That's old relationships that don't bear any fruit, whether it be relationships, friendships, bad habits, music, television programs, anything that's not allowing you to actually move forward, and anything that doesn't pride itself in helping you love yourself. That can be the type of music that you listen to, right? Some of us can't listen to Drake. I listen to Drake, but some of us can't listen to Drake, or some of us can't listen to a Future, some of us can't listen to Paramore or 21 Pilots or whatever your vice is. Some of us can't listen to certain artists because it puts us in a space that reminds us of just how trash we actually are as human beings. Some people say music heals, and some music does heal, but a lot of music actually perpetuates, at least for me, a lot of music actually perpetuated the vicious lies that I would tell myself, because I would buy into what they were saying about themselves, in turn putting it on myself, right? But we have to absolve ourselves of things that don't benefit us and don't curate us to actually love the person that God created us to be. And again, that can be anything for you. That can be, again, music, people, movies, different vices that you have. I'm not sure, but absolve yourself of those things. Set yourself free from the things that are actually holding you back from pushing forward. All right. So accept yourself, love yourself, and the third one, accept yourself, absolve yourself, and affirm yourself. This is the last and vital key. 1 Peter 2:9 NIV says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possessions, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." Remind yourself constantly of who you are, and more important, who God says you are. And you hear this all the time. You hear this all the time in prosperity preaching, but I don't believe it's just prosperity preaching. I believe that it is the key fact I believe that it is a key fact. It's definitely a key fact in my faith. Whenever I look myself in the mirror and I don't like who I see, I don't like who I, as Raheem, sees. But once I start to tune and remind myself of who God called me to be and who God sees when he looks at me, I didn't have to affirm myself. I have to affirm myself in the things that God called me to be, in the way that God sees me instead of how I see myself. A lot of us don't affirm ourselves. A lot of us take time to tear ourselves down more than build ourselves up. To affirm yourself is an action of loving yourself, right? And the whole concept of loving yourself, right? When you accept who you are, when you absolve yourself of the things that you can't control in your past to push forward, and when you affirm yourself of where you are and where you're going, where God has you going, it becomes a little easier to love yourself. And I have to implement these 3 A's all the time. So hopefully they help you like they've helped me. Accept who you are. Don't settle for who you are. Accept who you are. Absolve yourself of things that you can't control because a price has already been paid for you. And affirm yourself for the price that's been paid for you. And affirm yourself for where God is taking you. And then, hopefully then, you're able to love yourself a little bit easier because God loves you. He paid the ultimate price. He sent his son to pay an ultimate price for you. And if we really don't love ourselves, can we truly appreciate God? That was my last thing. If I don't love who I am, but I'm created by God, how much love yourself, man. Love yourself, because you deserve it. You deserve to love yourself to the point that you're so spilling over with love that you can love those that surround you. That's my spill, man. Episode 40. Thank you for everybody that's tuned in. Hopefully these 3 A's help you. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at ReachOverCulture. I am Rock. You can find me on Facebook at Raheem Cornegie. You can find us on Twitter at Rock the Podcast. More episodes coming. This has been episode 40. Thank you. Love you guys. Praying for you guys. This is episode 40. And we out.